president. So for today, we really ask you guys to download the application, give us some feedback, and more importantly, ask speaker questions. So once you download the application, you can go to the agenda section, and there's going to be a program tab there, and once you click on the program tab, you'll be able to kind of see a whole feed, and that's where you can kind of post pictures, add comments, and ask questions. So just really encouraging you guys to ask questions today, and then kind of, see how that goes.
What's the name of the app?
Yeah, the name of the application is Joyvent, Joybent. We do have a couple of posters posted around so you can see it. And yeah, so we have the iPhone app available as well as the Android application. The BlackBerry parts, we're currently evaluating that right now. Yeah. Yes?
And you want to highlight that the registered folks, they have gotten this email already, so if they can download that is
Exactly. Yeah, so some of you, as Rehan highlighted, you might have received an email which gives you a link to pretty much go and download it, and then you can just log in with your credentials. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, I'll be here, and some of us are here too, and feel free to ask and connect. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Are you guys having fun? Are you enjoying the app? All right. Okay, so we are going to get started. There he is. All right. So how many, I think Raj already asked you a question, I'm going to repeat again. How many of you are new to TiE? All right, all of you are members, I suppose, because we have a deal going, fall special. You become a member today, you get all the events free and all this spicy Indian food plus a glass of wine. Actually, wine was reenacted because last week Raj was trying this free thing and there was no wine. I said, Raj, what happened to the wine? So he said, okay, I'll get the bottles back. So anyway, if you guys are still not up to it, please go ahead. I think there are some more bottles left, and have some wine, and then we'll have some fun here. And if you're not a member, so please become a member. It's a great non-profit organization focused on fostering entrepreneurship with heavily led by volunteers, all these wonderful panelists. Even some of them have come all the way from north of Berkeley, right there. So I mean, you have to give them credit, driving all the way down on 880. So, okay, so with that, let me just get going. I'll just take 2 minutes, just tell you about TiE. How many of you know about TiE? Oh, you know. How many of you don't know about TiE? Well, all of you know, I'm sorry. I had a glass of wine. So TiE was founded in 1992 by a group of entrepreneurs and highly successful professionals who came from South Asian region, and hence the name, the Indus Entrepreneur, which is the full form of TiE. So even though it's an open organization and anyone can become a member, like I said, for 30 cents a day, $100, and then you get all the free food for the rest of the year only. It's just fall special. So now today, since its founding in 1992, TiE has grown to over 60 chapters globally and in over, I think, 19 countries? 16 countries, I'm sorry. They just added Portugal and Israel recently. It used to be 14. So, and it's all the way, like I said, in Portugal, Spain, Israel, in, all the way in cold country like Stockholm, Sweden, and Australia, India, most of the cities, in North America, in Canada, and here, as well as even in Pakistan, we've got in a couple of places. So, which is basically the mission of TiE is to foster entrepreneurship, and we seek to cultivate and nurture the ecosystem of entrepreneurship. Now, we have 4 constituencies. Number one is our charter members. How many charter members do we have in the audience today? Okay. Yeah, so a lot of these charter members, they're very highly successful entrepreneurs and professionals, so please connect with them. Could be your advisors, investors, and customers. Then second constituency is our members. Like I said, anyone can be a member. And third is our sponsors who help us financially, like number of companies like IBM, Microsoft, SAP, to venture capital firms, as well as legal firms and advisory firms like KPMG, etc. So, which we are really thankful to them. Do we have any sponsors here today? I guess IBM folks, I saw some of them. Even SAP, Pius was here, and he's a big data expert. There he is. So, really thanks a lot to all of you again. And then the fourth constituency is our volunteers. Like I said, our panelists, our co-chairs, and who have a very small staff with Raj, who is here, with few folks like Patricia, Shilpi, there, and all these people work really, really hard, and to have these kind of events where it's full, and make sure that you guys are fed well with some good spicy food sometimes. So those are the 4 constituencies we have, and then what we do is basically programs around entrepreneurship. Our key flagship program is TiECon. Some of you might have already heard about TiECon. Okay, how many of you have been to TiECon? Okay, so those who haven't been, please make sure you go. It's held in second week of May every year, and dates already there on the website. In fact, last year, TiECon was listed as one of the top 10 conferences for ideas in entrepreneurship by World Magazine, along with World Economic Forum and TED, which was really a great accomplishment. Especially TiECon is organized by a group, by about 300 to 400 volunteers. They start working on it in December. So this is really, and it's been happening since 1994. About 3,000 to 4,000 attendees come, and it's like a boot camp for 2 days on entrepreneurship. You have all kind of folks, VCs, industry experts, entrepreneurs, and aspiring entrepreneurs. So please make sure you attend that. Then we have industry-specific programs like today. We have social media, so we have this panel of highly accomplished experts over here. And then similarly, we have other industry sector programs like cloud, and then life sciences, energy, and mobile. So those, kind of around the trends or the growth areas where the investments are going on in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So those are the programs. Then we have some specific ones like TiE Women's Forum, TiE Growth Company Forum. In fact, there's an event on M&A and growing your company next Tuesday. Those who are interested, please attend that. And then next Thursday, we have an event which is about big data and software and services in energy sector. So these are all industry specific. And then, so those are the main events. So with that, what I would like to do is introduce Bhaskar Roy, a very highly successful entrepreneur. So he was one of the pioneers in an app called Quick, which was bought by Skype. If you look at one of the first mobile video platforms. So Bhaskar has been a charter member, and in fact we did a My Story on his company. Was successfully bought by Skype early last year, and last year in September, that time frame, we did My Story on he shared his story, and then we also asked him to come and start volunteering. So he became co-chair for our social media, We don't have our second co-chair, who is Shalini Govind-Pai. She's director of at YouTube, Google, and both of them spend a lot of time in helping us organize. And then again, thanks to our highly accomplished panelists, I would like to invite Bhaskar to introduce our event and panelists.
I won't take much time. Just say that we have a very, very strong panelist here, and this will be chaired by Jessica. So I hope you all enjoy the panel on social curation. Thanks.
All right, guys, pick up your mic. I'm Jessica Hassan. I've been doing social media for the last 10 years. Won an Interactive Emmy and a couple other awards for some of my work for some of the biggest brands in the industry. I've been very lucky to work with several of the people on the panel, but also just talk with them earlier, so I think it's going to be a great panel. Let's start.
I'm Chase Michael. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Infinigraph. We are a cloud-based big data analytics company. Marketers are drowning in the physical amount of information they're having to process. We've simplified trend identification, enabling them to make more effective content marketing campaigns.
I'm Manu Rekhi. I'm a venture capitalist with a company called Inventors Capital. My prior experience has mostly been in product-related stuff. I ran Gmail and Google Calendar at Google for a few years. Ran Orchid, which is a social networking site at Google, and then DoubleClick. Then ran a social gaming company that got acquired last year. So deep experience with social for quite a few years.
Hi, I'm Anand Jagannathan. I'm the founder CEO of Newsstand. We build information distribution and social curation solutions. And we just launched an iPad app called News Social, which is really a socially created news magazine. So think of it as we start where the existing news media readers like Flipboard or Pulse stop, where you can be your own editor, your friends can be your own editor, you can create very specialized channels on micro streams and share them through your social network. And basic premise here is that if you're familiar with Drudge, which is the largest driver of traffic to most news sites, people go to Drudge because he's a curator. Our basic contention is your network has a lot of mini drudges, each one in their own area of expertise. And just topical, we actually have a channel right now on India corruption. It's all of the anti-corruption movement going on. And highly topical, curated by a bunch of people. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Escobosa. I am the Vice President of Product Management for a company called Glam. It's a media company. We specialize in lifestyle topics that mostly address women 18 to 44. Specifically, there are topics like wellness, fashion, beauty, food, parenting, things like that. We curate a tremendous amount of content in a very, very large network of bloggers dedicated to each channel. And so I think that's part of the angle that I'll probably bring. The other aspect is my background is actually an interaction designer, and I studied psychology, so I'll probably come a lot from the perspective of the user.
Hi, my name is Shantanu Bhattacharya. I run a company called Sonorix. So let me try to describe you in simply what we do. Every day, millions of conversations take place between friends, peer-to-peer, about topics that are of brand's interest. You and I talking about muscle cars. So what we enable the brands of the millions of conversations that take place in a topic. In car, for example, in the United States, in a given hour, there are about 2 million conversations. We take the top 20 to 50 that makes sense for a brand to engage. So in real time, what you do, take the 2 million conversations within 10 minutes of that. If this is relevant, if people are talking about muscle cars, and if a topic is peaking and there's a bunch of followers, you route it to our brand manager to join and build their brand's momentum. So we focus on peer-to-peer conversations. The big data space, it is a big data problem, but the big data, real value of a big data is when you take a big chunk of data and give it to someone they can action on. So when people ask me what business we are in, we essentially say we're in gold panning business. There's a 4 ton of rock, there's a 2 ounce of gold hidden there. So instead of giving the brand the 4 tons of rocks and saying, hey, there is some gold there, we give them the 2 ounces of gold. Profession is probably by training, I'm probably the most exciting of all of us. For living, at one point in time, I built spacecrafts, and it made sense to do that in the US. So probably the only certified rocket scientist that worked on a spacecraft that orbits a planet about 1 billion miles away. So when people say is there a rocket scientist in the room, I usually say one, but probably not more.
Hi, my name is Misha Bierman. I am a product manager with Bing. And the product that I work on is called Social Search. Some of you might have seen the sidebar feature that we recently added to Bing. And the sidebar, we feature content that comes from Facebook, comes from Twitter, from editorial feeds from our bloggers that we select. And also recently we added links to Bing News, and also just very, very recently we added content from Cloud. This is all public information. I don't know how many of you seen this. Those are new features that we added in the last 3.5 months. But one of the flagship features that I worked on is making Quora data available on Bing. So I'm a former engineer. I've actually been with Microsoft for 10 years. Been working as a software developer on Hotmail and Vista and LiveSearch and other products. And recently became a program manager with MSN and now with Bing.
Hi, I'm Oliver Starr. I'm currently the chief evangelist for a company called Pearl Trees, which has built a curation platform that lets you collect, organize, and share all the stuff you like. Prior to that, I was the first employee at TechCrunch. So I've been sort of watching the development of this curation space from almost the earliest stages of a professional blogosphere starting to today. And so my perspective on it, I think, is both as one of the sort of original curators of this content for the masses, and now helping to manage a community that's well over 500,000 users that are curating almost every topic you can imagine.
All right, thanks, guys. So the concept of curation has come up quite a bit just in presentation of introducing yourself. And I'd love to get each of your takes on what you think curation is and what it means to you personally, or how you define it.
Sure. I always like to go from a use case. One of our clients is L'Oreal. Right now we are processing about 150 brands for them, and we're looking over different variations of content and surfacing that content for different lines of businesses. So one of the cool things that's happening over there is that the line of business managers, they're trying to figure out what is working in their industry. And what's great about what's happening on social is the fact that, we've moved from a keyword world to an interest graph world. So every known piece of content, at least that we're aware of, has a social share function on it. And that's a really big game changer, because now a consumer, an individual, can now be driving the relevancy and the interaction, and therefore surfacing content, which before was you're virtually hitting. The only way we could find content in the past was search. So that's really changed the game. So for L'Oreal, what we're doing specifically, and to answer your question, what's exciting about that is a business line manager can learn and determine what is relevant to their customers based upon what they're surfacing in their own vertical industry. So what is hot? And then being able to take that and drive and define their own content strategies. So they're not only curating the content, so we just recently released some results. We got a 60% increase in engagement on one of their vertical sites. It was based upon the fact that they were consistently curating relevant content to engage their customers. And I think that's the key to all of this, is how do you create engagement? How do you surface relevant content that's important to your audience? And that's really the basis of where we look at curation. We call it hyper-curation.
So I actually like to take the word curation to what it actually meant a long time ago before the web came around, right? It's the museum, right? I mean, you have a curator in a museum that goes through a bunch of stuff and figures out what to actually put up in the museum, so that me and you, when you go through, don't have to look through 20,000 pieces of item, right? So it's just, what are those 50 or 100 that actually matter, right? And I think, so if you look at what's happening today, it's a combination of what algorithms do and versus what people do, right? And if you look at what Google does in terms of, or Bing, in terms of figuring out what you should be looking for when you search for something, is a form of curation, right? It's done by algorithms. When you look at Facebook, not all your friends' newsfeed show up on your Facebook, right? So Facebook is doing some curation, figuring out what you should be looking at. Whether it's news or anything else, and I think it helps you figure out how to get to the clutter. And if you have people, if I follow Guy Kawasaki and I can read all the news he's reading, it helps me not figure out all the stuff I have to read. I can actually follow because I trust him. So there's a piece of trust with the social, with the person, and then there is the algorithms that can help you figure out the clutter. I think you'll hear some of the panelists say as well, is to figure out, there's a sort of a fine line between figuring out where the algorithms stop and where the humans take over, or vice versa. And I think the best curation softwares are still being developed, and they'll continue to get improved as we have better computing power and better people that can actually figure the signals out.
So yeah, if actually, Manu had a good point. You start with curation. The first use of curation was, it was a very small amount of content, picking artwork for a museum. But then, if you talk about brands, Chris talked about it. But if you go down to the other extreme, where I look at links that are shared to me on Facebook, or links that are tweets that I'm following, I get a lot of different content. The problem is that someone may be an expert on one topic and they may not be an expert on another topic. So curation always has to be in the context of what the curator is an expert on. And so if there is an organized way where you can say, this person's expert on baseball, go Giants, and this person is expert on technology, and this person is expert on sports cars, you start relying on people. So I don't like everything that, to Guy Kawasaki's reference, I don't actually care for everything he says, but on small areas I may rely on him. So really what I need is curators on specific topics to help me sort through. And I myself may be a curator. So this whole social aspect of curation, where in your network you have curated experts on topics and you know them because you know who they are, is really sort of the whole approach to social curation.
So my definition of curation is pretty well in line with the last two, with Manu, with Anand. The only thing I would differ is, I think I would say, I don't think that expertise is a necessary component of curation. I think that curation is more about attention, and really, if I take the camera all the way back, I would say we're human. Humans are a social species, and we use the ways that we communicate with each other, what we choose to share, how we share it, the media through which we share it. All of that is the way that we're really communicating about often our hopes, our dreams, our fears, all of these things. So curation to me is more about attention, and it's a little bit more about to what do I want to align myself with? What stream of taste making do I consider something that I want to invite into my life versus other ones I want to shut out?
All right, there's an advantage of sitting towards the end of it. Your answer is supposed to get shorter and shorter, but hopefully also more specific. So I agree with most of the panelists on that so far, and if I can summarize it, they talked about two layers of curation. One is a belief in an expert network. I want to listen to someone, I think Manu specifically said, if I want to listen to Guy Kawasaki because I believe he's an expert on a bunch of stuff. Within that person, Guy Kawasaki, I also believe he's the expert on 3 different things, but not on the 7 other topics. So now there's a second layer. I believe Guy, but I only believe Guy when he writes about, and I'm not sure whether he does or not, when he writes about astrophysics, right? The third layer is actually what we look at is timeliness. Guy may be expert in, he's maybe an expert. He maybe talk about 7 different topics in which I believe him in astrophysics and cooking. But at this point in time, am I receptive to either talk about, listen or talk or read about astrophysics or cooking? So that's the third aspect. Because there's so much clutter, those are the 3 dimensions we try to essentially solve the problem in, which hopefully gets us into better and better content in a timely manner. There's only so much time. If you look at the total amount of time spent on content, that has gone up somewhat. The channels are shifting. It's moving from, say for example, from TV, some of it is moving from TV to the social, but the total amount of time is still roughly the same. So in order for you to consume more and more relevant information, part of it that we try to introduce, or that I feel is very important, is the timeliness of it.
So yeah, this is definitely, so far what we heard, I think it's definitely in line with what I was about to say, but there was a lot of things said about expertise. So we're talking about expert networks, which I think is, we're seeing this, rise of expert networks like Quora, Zulia, Foursquare, where people basically say, we know something by even leaving a simple tip on a restaurant and saying, I've been here, I've seen this, I'm a mayor, I've found a way to to perform a specific task and write about this. So we always can say, someone is a teacher and also a student and all that. So that creates content that is self-curated by users of those social networks, which I think is a key point, that there's very, at least for Bing, we noticed that there's a very little interaction needed from our editors that review this content. As we begin to learn about data, which is a key point, and also rely that those social networks have really good understanding of what and self-management of their content. So for us is to say curation or curated content means it's trying to limit amount of spam that shows up on Bing, and also seeing, or social spam to show up on Bing, and also seeing really high relevancy in terms of trying to find out what's the user intent is, and surface the best content available for us at that minute.
Well, I think that there's a lot of interesting perspectives, but I'd like to take a step even further back and talk about curation as an innate human activity. I think one of the reasons that we're seeing this extraordinary rise in this behavior across the board is because people, just by our nature, ever since we began to have the resources to have things besides surviving, we've always looked for shiny stuff, and when we get that shiny stuff, we show it off to our friends, and we collect it. And this is the basis for everything that we're doing digitally now. Right? All we're doing is empowering people in a new way to do something that they naturally want to do. And if we do this well, we're going to see, and we are seeing, an enormous proliferation of very powerful tools that allow people to curate in different ways. When I talk about curation, a lot of people ask me, who's a curator? And my answer is, did you pick out your outfit? Because that's a simple act of curation that everybody does every single day. And some people are more gifted in this and they do it more regularly, and they become editors or pundits or museum curators or topical experts, and they use these different tools more effectively than, say, the general public, because it's their business to do so. But the second part of the problem is sort of this bigger picture of one-by-one recommendations filtered by your trusted whomever. And I'm not really sure that I believe that's curation. I don't think that what's coming into my Facebook page is curation. I think it's recommendations by people that I have an association with. And it's not until you have an actual assembly of parts that have been painstakingly reviewed and edited and oriented in a way that there's more meaning than the sum of those parts. And that's really what, at least for me, I'm talking about when I say curated.
I actually disagree with Michelle a little bit. I'll tell you why. So at Google also we have lots of social curation that would actually just take signals and improve your relevancy, right? So there's a difference between, I think Bing itself or Google itself are actually curating content which you should be looking at when you search for something, because you can look at millions of content, but they're trying to figure out what top 5 or 10 you should look at, right? So it's a very machine-based sort of algorithm that actually tells you what you are, and you can add more signals to it, right? Page ranking is one. I can look at Twitter feeds and sort of figure out, okay, well, I can rank this higher because all of a sudden this topic is getting relevancy, and I can actually Twitter and correlate back to my search results. And I think to your point, I'll agree a little bit more in terms of, if I'm, I can be creating, I dressed myself this morning, but I don't think I'm a curator. And the point is, there are certain people that are really good at it, and they're fashion stylists, right? So the fashion stylists are curators because they're trying to figure out, across all these things you could be buying, which outfits actually would be worth it to actually go purchase, right? So in some sense, they're actually putting, they could be curating a Macy's store as well, what actually goes up in the lobby, what goes up in the racks. And that's a sort of curation as well. I think, to your point, we're doing the same thing we do in the physical world. There's people that are experts. People will ask me for advice on what cell phone to buy, but they'll never come to me for fashion advice, right? And then there's a big reason to that. Why? It's the first time I'm wearing a full sleeve shirt too. But it sort of matters in terms of who those experts are. And I think a signal is one thing to have an aggregate, so to say everybody that checks into Foursquare can tell me the signal that that place is important, but it doesn't tell me if it's worth for me to go there because this is the best place to go. It just tells me it is a place I should be visiting. So I think that there's a fine line between curation and signals that can make your relevancy better.
Just on that note, I mean, we've got curation kind of down for the most part, different perspectives and all that kind of thing. How do you feed this beast of content? Because people are constantly curating. How do you find the right people for your brand? How do you find the right people for your business that can help influence? And feel free to jump in as you want to go around.
Let me start on that. So the old days where when you had museums, you had a very small number of art curators. But the whole aspect of curation now is that now with Facebook and Twitter, now in front of Nisha, that if someone sends a Facebook, look, are they a curator? Well, they may think they're a curator, but if there are 10 people who read the link, that means they are a curator because they are influencing those people. So the question that comes is, everyone is a curator, but until they can be influencing some people. And everyone is an expert on something. It depends, you may have a following, like you dress yourself, you may have a following of one, or you may have 100 people who follow you. So to some extent, I think to feed the beast, as you say, it has to get relegated at a more ground root level where it is social, and there is a certain amount of reputation that goes with it. And I think reputation is a key. It sort of makes certain curators rise higher because people rely on them. So that's where the whole concept of following and everything else comes in.
What's your name again? Michelle. No, your name. Michelle? No.
Oliver.
Oliver. So Oliver made a really good point, and it's if you noticed, you probably follow some bloggers out there that are actually doing a really good job of bringing together very rich content, and they're going out and reading, and that clearly is, I would say, the highest level of content curation there is, because they're creating lists, or they're made, look at top 20 sites that produce certain types of. I mean, they were curating the curating software. And they're making recommendations and reference. So in that essence, that's a very high level, and there's very few of those people that actually exist that are doing that.
Right there.
Well,
Yeah.
well, yeah, Glam, and you've got Complex. I mean, there's many sites that are like that. But then there's, you step back on that, you say, well, okay, there is websites or sites that are creating content. They're out there aggressively going out and paying to create content, creating stories about themselves. And, you rarely find where you'll see maybe an automotive company will start talking about diapers, let's say. So reality is we live in a verticalization world. And that is that it's very defined. Online. I mean, and so what's great about what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years is that, yes, these social presences have popped up. They are feeding content in that is in some ways collected and based upon their influence. But one of the things that we're doing in Pentagraph is we've spent the last 2 years organizing that world, which is it's really not organized based upon categories. So we put all the automotives together, bifurcated those, put all the cosmetics. So once you do that, now you really have an asset, and that's sort of the programmatic curation aspect, is how do I surface and filter that content at that scale and then be able to extract value? And I have just one quick question to the audience. How many of you here are using some type of personalization, personal curation software, like a Paperly? No, 1, 2, really? 3, 2, 5 people in this, 6, 10?
Well, expand the list.
Expand.
Well, I mean, Flipboard. Well, no. I don't think Twitter and lists. Yes. Okay. So that's, but not a lot of people don't use lists. That's the thing.
But that's a matter of degree. It's
Right.
not a matter of product, right?
Well, yes, Microsoft.
Scoble is
Yeah.
he's a curator of
Sure.
Twitter lists.
And Google Plus.
There's Scoop and Storyfy.
Yeah, Scoop it, sort. Yeah, exactly. Yes, there you go. So you see, there's a lot of curators already in here.
Yeah, that's why I said everyone is a curator, and as long as they have a forum to be able to do that.
But how do you tap into that? So how do you tap into those curators of high influence that reach your audience as a startup or as a company? I mean, we talk about the curation. We have people in here that use curation regularly, but how? Glam, I mean, I think that would probably be, I mean, Buzz came out with a recent study, and I shared it with the panelists, that said that celebrity was the top shared thing, but as a startup or a new company, it's very difficult to get a celebrity involved. How do you find content that's relevant and tap into those influencers?
I think that's
Celerex can talk on that too as well.
Sure, that's a complicated question because celebrity, by definition, if you take 1,000 people, celebrities are more known by more people because that's what makes them celebrities. So if you're looking for keyword searches and things like that on people, of course celebrities are going to show up more on. It's kind of a Powers Law problem. But that said, it is still true that we are drawn to celebrities. So it depends on, I think, strategically how you want to align your content. I would not probably advise pitching your startup against the concept of celebrity. It will exist forever. So how do you work with the idea that as humans we are attracted to famous people and famous stories and famous events that are happening right now? There are a lot of biases that exist in human attention. You should probably structure your company to take advantage of that and not be against it. At Glam, we believe really that authentic voices are the voices that end up mattering over time, and so we are very much a human curated company. So everything that we do have a lot of technology behind the scenes that help our human editors make decisions about whether or not something should be featured. And that's a very particular business model that I wouldn't advise all of these companies to try. But it's the one that we've made for ourselves, and it works. It works for us, and I think it results in a lot of very, very high quality premium content that's expertly curated by people who really know the field. I'm not sure I could do a search engine that way.
Celerex.
Okay. Yeah. So in our case, the defining moment is essentially a signal or an intent from the person and his or her willingness to receive a content, curated content. So we work from the brand side, right? So given everything else being equal, right? The content is available, we know that person interest, we know who this person is connected to. We typically advise the brands to wait for a signal. The signal could be two ways. One is a short-term signal. There's a bunch of conversations going on, and I suddenly jumped in a conversation about car styling. If a brand is trying to have a one-to-one conversation with me, I wait for that signal. And within a few minutes, I can send that signal back to the brand saying that, hey, you were waiting to engage with Jessica. Jessica just spoke about car styling. This may be a moment. So that's essentially what you call, from a brand's perspective, monetizing that moment. That's one way. The second is a long-term signal, which is Jessica speaks about car styling or engages in conversations about car styling. From her interaction, we know that she retweets stuff when people talk about car styling, but does not necessarily have ever expressed interest in writing a content by herself where she has shown explicit interest. There, we say after a certain amount of thresholds have been met, so say you have retweeted for the 5 times in the past month, we essentially start engaging with a piece of content to see whether you, from a brand's on behalf of the brands, to see whether you engage. So to us, it's essentially all about a signal. The model of broadcasting to a mass group of people at all times is over.
So it's more about the personalization of it.
Personalization and just the real-time signals.
So Bing, how do you answer that though as a search engine? How do you become, beyond a social tab, how do your results and content and what type of content is actually resonating?
Well, first of all, we're all celebrities, right? We're celebrities to our coworkers, we're celebrities to our children, we're celebrities to our friends. The definition of celebrity starts with you and ends with you, right? You say who you are. People that come today to the water coolers now, on Monday morning, they expect that you're going to know everything about how they spend weekends, right? That's already given. You don't only know what they did, we also know not only activities that they did, if they enjoyed it, what kind of weather was in the place where they were, who also were there, what pictures they taken. You know a lot about that. So the fact that you're actually standing there, that is celebrity standing in front of you, right there. So now you went onto Bing, you perform a search, and then all of a sudden you see this, some information about your friends. Here's where the signal comes in. Those are your celebrities. Celebrities that went to college, celebrities that worked at places that relevant to your search query, posted pictures that were tagged, similar to or relevant to your search query, and all of a sudden you realize that those are your friends. So you're already influenced by their opinion because you already added them to your network. All of a sudden you see something that you didn't know about those particular friends. So what we noticed was super interesting, that once you do this, let's say, search about Stanford University, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of friends that lived in Palo Alto, because we kind of trying to conflate on that area. We know that you lived in Palo Alto. You know, some friends worked at Palo Alto Medical Center. We know some friends liked Stanford newspaper. We see engagement. People do click on links and want to know. Do you know what link, or let's say your attribute, people clicked on the most? Your education. A lot of your friends do not know where you went to college, and that is the most surprising thing. We've seen engagement beyond understanding. We didn't even know how that's possible, why people do that, but what we know, that people want to learn about that specific aspect of your life. So once we move outside your Facebook sort of area, outside your friends, we move to what we call social networks, like what it is like Twitter, Foursquare, and for example Quora. We noticed very interesting thing. If we can conflate, and if we conflate on your Facebook ID or Twitter ID, and all of a sudden someone who had answered a question on Quora that received absolutely no votes, 0 votes. So it was completely, irrelevant answer to a very specific question that matched your criteria. We think that if we were able to identify that this is your Facebook friend, and this is the friend that opinion you trust, moving that person up, just by saying that this one of your friends is on that social network that answered the question, creates completely super engagement by means we could not even imagine. So knowing that someone answered a question, and that question received negative votes, number of votes, even like people said this is wrong, but having that person on your list of friends is super valuable.
How do you tap into that though, as a company or a brand? How do you create content that gets into your friend's feed, that gets into the Quora search of a friend of a friend of a friend?
Relevance.
How do you create relevance? I think that's a question for all of us.
Relevance is one thing. So I'm actually having, I had this debate earlier today where I said there are some things that search engine is good at. So for example, finding local weather, or how to get to this place, or some set of information that is relatively static, similar to what Wikipedia is doing. And there's some information that you want real people to answer. And you want to say, for example, here's the question I posted very recently on Quora, and actually surfaced that through Bing. The question was how to remove cement from carpet. You cannot ask that. Search engine will probably give you tons of information while you start digging through this.
Yes, but if I'm a cement remover for carpet stains,
Right.
what do I do? How do I get in this conversation so I can get a sale?
What are the chances that Google or Bing is gonna surface your link the most, even if you're just in that business? There are tons of Wikipedia pages, types of how-tos and do-it-yourself and so on and so on. Here there was someone on Quora that answered this question. And actually the results were unbelievable. You cannot. So instead of digging through all that thing, you cannot remove that. You sell it, you can throw away your carpet.
So I'm a carpet salesman, and I now want to join this conversation. What type of content do I create, Oliver, based on your experience, to actually engage with this consumer?
Well, for that kind of a thing, I actually also really think Quora is a beautiful product. And I think that they're creating something that's completely unique right now in terms of qualitative knowledge, based on their system of helping experts in topics identify questions they should answer, and then letting the community determine who the best answers are. And I've answered some questions on Quora which became pretty popular, and so I've seen sort of that virtuous cycle occur. But I also want to. One of the most curated things of all that we all use every day is Wikipedia. But how many of you care who edited the Wikipedia entry? You? Okay.
I read it.
How many of you are Wikipedians who actually contribute? Okay, so the same people that care about who's editing are people who are reviewing and approving, right? So that's a heavily curated product but we generally speaking, the majority of people don't really care who the editor was. They just care about the information, right? It's great for finding that specific answer, just like Quora is wonderful. I asked on Quora how many people on the planet have ever seen snow. And a meteorologist gave me an answer that was probably pretty accurate, right? Quora's beautiful for that. But what if I just want to know about autism? That's a really big challenge for a search engine, because when you type in autism, you're going to get 647 million web pages that all mention autism. And the first one's going to be Wikipedia, and the second one's going to be WebMD. But if you've got a kid with autism, and you really want to know the basic stuff and the treatments that are working, the best source of all is going to be someone else with a kid that has autism. And if that person has discovered a way to curate the work that they've already done and organize it and share it with other people, which they probably want to do because it helps a community that they're a member of, those are the products where curation is going to be the most valuable. It's where it's most clearly differentiated from a search engine, and it's where the value of a community is probably most fully realized. And and there's a lot of different products that do that well. I'm not here to just talk about my own company's product, although I think we probably are one that excels because that's been our focus. But I think you need to ask yourself, do you care about who the curator is? Do you care about the quality of the information? And are you in a position to determine whether the curator has provided quality information, or do you need a community to determine that? The Wikipedians determine whether an article deserves good article status by reviewing it, looking at the links. In Quora, the community decides whether an answer is good by voting it up, right? But absent those tools, how do you know?
It's quality. It's consistency and quality. We just did a project around health where we gathered together cancer, diabetes, and some other verticals. There was about 40 different other hospitals. You wouldn't believe it, but Boston Medical Hospital actually has more engagement and more engaging content than WebMD. If you don't believe me, I'll show you. It was shocking, but it was because they were consistent with their creation of the content and the quality of the content. We also saw the same thing when we did a project around recruiting, and that there was a recruiting site that just didn't put up the information about what they were looking for. They actually created an experience about why they wanted to recruit the person to come and be a part of an organization. And that site was getting the highest degree of interaction and shares, and resulted in the best gathering of individuals that were quality to effectively apply for the job. Another company took that same approach over, and they're doing very well with it. And so, a very good example of saying it's all about quality and relevance.
So I think to Oliver's point, I think there are two aspects of it. I mean, you go to Wikipedia, sometimes you want to find some information, but it's stale, and that's the reality. There are always two aspects of it. If I want to do research, or I want to find out what's the latest. If I want to find out what's the latest on autism, if I do a search on Google, I'm not going to find the latest stuff. It's going to be a lot of new stuff that's coming in there. And so there is always an aspect of time, which is, are you doing research? Are you finding what's new? And it depends on the topic. You may do both. But I mean, my classic example of Wikipedia is I never go there if I want to find something new because I know it's stale information. There'll always be some other thing. Now, Quora is interesting because you do actually get current information, but I still think its universe is reasonably small. So what you always need, and of course you have this thing, and how many people post on Facebook saying, I have a question about this, does anyone have an answer to that? And people reply back to that. And that's, so I do think that actually you're just at the tip of the iceberg with the social networks. Because your social network is not just your social network, it's your extended social network. So I think it's a combination of time, means what's new and what's for research. And I think you have to sort of combine the two. And maybe search engines do that. But I think you're always going to need a certain amount of search engine and then need a certain amount of curation. I mean, give you a simple example. We have a channel on Porsche cars. Well, one of the articles there is about Lindsay Lohan. Why? Because she used a sports car and smashed it. Now, that's an interesting thing. That actually may interest more of the celebrity gossip, but it is getting picked up at Porsche, and it may be relevant at Porsche, or it may not be. So there's always this combination. This is where the human curation comes in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's super hard to fine-tune the answer that search engines provide, and I think the main challenge here is to understand user intent here. Is basically when someone searches for Porsche, you can say, I don't know if your company has that luxury actually, looking through the logs and actually find out what are the popular searches are in, let's say, in the last 10 seconds or 24 hours or 6 months. You can actually try to tailor, assuming that you have additional signals, you can guess what user intent is. And that's how I think you win those sessions in repeated, repeated searches from the same users. What I wanted to make another point is about experts, right? We talked about experts here a bit. How do we trust this? How do we trust those experts, right? Are those really experts or just people who know? And we looked at that. We looked at that specific word. Is that expert or just somebody who knows? And I think we've decided to not call those experts because there's no verification attached to this. One of the things that I very recently came across is someone was using our product to do a people search on themselves, and they're super smart. They're smart in the area of computer vision. Let's say they did a search for themselves, and the cloud gave them a signal that they are in an area of computer vision. So they looked at the sidebar, and they noticed a bunch of experts. And the first reaction was, who are those people? Why am I looking at those? I'm an expert in computer vision. Why am I looking at these guys or girls? I don't know who they are. And this was a first dissatisfaction report that we got. Who are those people? I don't know them. Then I showed this to